Morning, everyone. Happy Friday. We made it to the end of another week. Ooh, you did it. Give yourself a pat on the back. All right, here is your do now for today. So the first question, go ahead and put it in the chat. What's your favorite Beyonce song? Second question and third question will be share out loud. So how do you find the axis of symmetry from equation in vertex form? And how do you find the y-intercept from an equation written in vertex form? So let's go ahead and get those answers in the chat. 3 minutes on the clock. 3 minutes on the clock. Yes, Lexi, Black Parade is my current favorite too. If I Were a Boy, excellent one, Elise. I was just thinking about that song the other day. Love on Top, a classic, Jonathan. I agree. One more minute, one more minute. Get your answers in the chat. Conrad, you have no favorite Beyonce song? Okay, I'm gonna have to give you extra homework today to listen to Beyonce. That'll be your weekend project. Crazy in Love is a good one. Okay, let's go and get started. Number 2, how do you find the axis of symmetry? Whatchamacallit? How do you find the axis of symmetry from an equation written in vertex form? How do you find the axis of symmetry? What do you have for me, Bo? Can you go and answer number 2? How do you find the axis of symmetry from an equation written in vertex form? What'd you say? Sorry, I couldn't hear you. Did we lose you, Bo?
I said, isn't that the x?
It's the x equals, but how do you figure out, how do you figure out that x?
B over 2a.
That's for standard form, but do you remember how we do it for vertex form? Remember, it's the opposite of h. So you look at the h value, and then you take the opposite sign of that, and that's going to be your axis of symmetry. All right. How do you find the y-intercept from an equation written in vertex form? How do you find the y-intercept from an equation written in vertex form? What do you have for me, Jonathan?
Plug in 0 for x.
Plug in a 0 for x. Exactly. Good job. All right, let's go ahead and do good things. So today our good things are gonna come from Naya, Noah, and Tyler. All right, Naya, what's your good thing?
I'm off of work today.
Who are you gonna do anything exciting with your time off?
Sleep.
Fair enough, fair enough. Thanks for sharing. Noah, what's your good thing?
It's Friday.
It's Friday. Yes, it is Friday, or Friday, as I like to say. Thanks for sharing. And then Tyler, what's your good thing?
I found a $20 bill.
You found a $20 bill? Where'd you find this $20 bill?
Yeah, it was, we moved recently, so I haven't unpacked everything. But I went in one of my boxes and it was just like in there. I didn't know it was even in there.
What a dream. That's so exciting. I'm happy for you. That's really a great Friday treat. My good thing is that, well, first of all, it's Friday, and obviously that means it's Pizza Friday. But also, today is pajama day. I don't know if you all got the memo, but these are my pajamas. And there's a competition amongst the teachers to to try to get a $50 gift card, and I think that I might have a chance. So, fingers crossed, everyone. What? Did someone say something? I'm sorry, I couldn't hear you. Okay, let's get started. Before we get to our new stuff, are there any questions about last night's homework that I can answer for you?
I didn't really understand how to do like the first problem.
The first problem from last night's? Okay, let me share let me get my big ideas math up. That was a weird timer that went off. What was I even timing? So that was from 2.2 part 2, correct?
Yeah.
All right, so sorry, I didn't mean to ask you to unmute, Tyler. I clicked the wrong button. Okay. Here we go. Identify the graph of f of x equals parentheses x minus 3 squared, then find the vertex and axis of symmetry. So this has an h value of -3, so that means that I'm moving my graph to the right 3, or in other words, my vertex is at 3, and then I don't have a k value, so the k is 0. So the graph that would fit that would be this guy right here, the top or the bottom left. And then the axis of symmetry is just the opposite of h. So to find the vertex, it's the opposite of h comma k. So that -3 changes to a +3, and the k is 0. And then the axis of symmetry is just the opposite of h, so 3. Does that answer your question, Noah?
Yeah,
Okay. Did you need me to go over any more, or was that good?
that's good.
Any other questions on the homework? All right, so let's go ahead and get out our notes for today. So you'll need 2 things for today. You'll need your cheat sheet, and you'll need your intercept form notes. So get both of those out, whether it's the physical copy or whether it's on Canvas. I especially want to make sure that you have that cheat sheet out, because it's going to be a lot harder if you don't have it. Remember, I don't ask you to memorize this stuff. All you need to know is how to find the information. So make sure that you have the information out. All right, so yesterday we talked about vertex form. The day before we talked about standard form. The last form we're going to talk about is factored form, also known as intercept form. It goes by both names, so either one is fine. I'm going to fold this over so that we don't have to look at the other stuff and we can just look at the factored form. All right, factored form. I think this is fixed on your version, but there should be a y equals a parentheses x minus p parentheses x minus q. So you know that it's factored form because you should have two parentheses with the x minus a number. Sometimes it'll be x plus a number, depending. All right, the stuff on your cheat sheet is the same as the front page of your notes, so it doesn't matter where you look to find the information. It's exactly the same. I just copied and pasted it. So I'm going to go off the cheat sheet. So to find the axis of symmetry for factored form, you are going to do this formula over here, which is p plus q divided by 2. The key thing you want to remember is that you have to use the opposite signs for p and q. And the reason why is because in the original formula, you have minus signs in front of the p and q. And anytime you have minus signs in the original formula, that means you have to take the opposite sign. Similarly to the x minus h, and we have to take the opposite of h. Anytime you see a minus in a formula, that means the opposite. The vertex, to find the vertex in factored form, it's the same as finding the vertex in standard form. You get your axis of symmetry, and then you plug it into the original equation to get your y value. Maximum and minimum is the same for all three formats. So you just look at the A value, and if your A value is positive, it's a minimum. If your A value is a negative, it's a maximum. And then to find that value, you just look at the Y value of the vertex. To find the y-intercept in factored form, it's the same as finding it in vertex form. So like Jonathan said today, all you do is plug in 0 for x to get the y value. And then up until now, we have not been required to find x-intercepts. So for standard form and for vertex form, I didn't ask you to find the x-intercepts, but for factored form or intercept form, you do need to find them. And to find the x-intercepts, you just take the p and q values, but the opposite signs of those. You won't really be required to identify domain and range. It's just sometimes nice to have that information. The domain is still all real numbers, so you can have any x value you want. The range, it is restricted. So if you have a minimum, then your y values can only be bigger than that minimum value. And if you have a maximum, your y values have to be less than your minimum value. Okay, so I'm going to have this out as I do this problem because you'll need to refer to it as you go through each characteristic of your graph. So we're supposed to find the vertex, axis of symmetry, y-intercept, x-intercept, and decide if it's a maximum or minimum, and then graph it. I like to start with the axis of symmetry first. So before I do that, actually, I'm going to identify my variables. So you should have an A value, a P value, and a Q value. Your A is going to be the number in front of the parentheses. So your A is -2. Your P is 3, and your Q is -1. To find the axis of symmetry, we use the formula P plus Q divided by 2, but we have to use the opposite signs for P and Q. So the opposite of +3 is -3, plus opposite of -1 is +1, divided by 2. -3 plus 1 is -2, divided by 2. And then -2 divided by 2 is -1. Questions? So x equals -1 is your answer. Once you've got your axis of symmetry, which is -1, to find the vertex, we plug in the axis into the equation to get the y value. So you're going to take this -1 and you're going to plug it in everywhere you see an x. So it's going to be -2, parentheses, -1 plus 3, parentheses, -1 minus 1. Let's see what that's going to give us. So take out my calculator. It's going to be -2, parentheses, -1 plus 3, -1 minus 1. That's going to give me 8. So my vertex is the axis of symmetry, so -1, comma, whatever I got when I plugged it in, so 8. To find the y-intercept, you need to plug in 0 for x to get the y value. I'm going to go down here so I have a little bit of room. So everywhere I see an x, I'm plugging in a 0. So it's -2 parentheses 0 plus 3 parentheses 0 minus 1. We've got -2 parentheses 0 plus 3 parentheses 0 minus 1. That's,
Why you do it like that?
say it again.
Why you do it like that?
Why do you plug it in that way?
Yeah.
Because I'm just plugging in a 0 everywhere I see an x in my original equation.
Okay.
And that's going to give me 6. So remember, for your y-intercept, the x value is always 0. And then the y value is whatever you got when you plugged in that 0. So in this case, it's 6. We haven't talked about x-intercepts before, and you only really need to find x-intercept if you're dealing with factored form. But to find the x-intercept, it's always going to be your p-value, but the opposite. So the opposite of +3 is -3. And then the y value for that coordinate will always be 0. So you always want to use a point for your x-intercept. The x part is going to be the opposite of p. The y is always going to be 0. And you have to do the same for q. So you're going to take the opposite of q, so +1, and then your y value is still going to be 0. Any questions so far?
So there are 2 answers for that?
There's going to be 2 x-intercepts, yes, for the most part. I'm trying to think if there would be an example. Unless your vertex is on the x-axis, you're always going to have 2. But I don't think you're going to see any examples like that. Any other questions? All right, the last part, find the maximum or minimum. So for that, you just look at the a value. My a value is -2, so I know if my a value is negative, then I'm going to have a maximum, so I'm going to circle maximum. And then to find the value of that maximum, it's just the y value of the vertex. So my vertex's y value was 8, so that's my maximum value. Again, it's only dependent on the a, so just look at the a and see if it's a positive or negative, and that's what's going to tell you if it's a maximum or a minimum. Questions so far? All right, let's go ahead and graph it then. So we've got the vertex first, so -1, 8 is your vertex. You've got your y-intercept at 0, 6. And then we also have these 2 points. So you have your x-intercepts that you can also graph. So let's go ahead and graph -3, 0 and +1, 0. Go ahead and draw your axis of symmetry. It goes straight through the vertex at x equals -1. And then reflect whatever you can. So these points are already reflected across from each other, but I can also reflect the y-intercept over. And then connect them all together. Questions? All right, let's go ahead and try number 2, but I'm going to ask you all to help me out. So I'll ask you all to give me the answers to each part. So let's start. Number 2 is negative 1/3 parentheses x minus 4 times x plus 2. First step, identify your variables. So give me your A, your P, and your Q. What do you have for me, Anam? What's my A, what's my P, what's my Q?
A is negative 1/3, P is negative 4, and Q is 2.
Good job. All right, now that I've got my variables identified, I'm going to go ahead and find my axis of symmetry. So how can I find my axis of symmetry? How can I find my axis of symmetry? What do you have for me, Ida?
You do P plus, so you do the formula, so it would be negative 4 plus 2 divided by 2.
Almost. Remember, you have to use the opposite signs for P and Q. So you want to change that negative 4 to positive 4, and then that positive 2 to a negative 2. That's the biggest mistake I see when students do this, so just make sure that you change the signs before you put it in the formula. 4 plus negative 2 is positive 2 divided by 2. 2 divided by 2 is 1. All right. Now that I have my axis of symmetry, how can I find the vertex? How can I find the vertex? What do you have for me, Natalie?
Don't you plug in x for 2? I mean 2 for x.
Well, what did we say our axis of symmetry was? It was 1, right?
Yeah.
So we have to plug in a 1 for x. Does that make sense? So we've got negative 1/3 parentheses 1 minus 4 parentheses 1 plus 2. And this one's a little tricky because it's got a fraction in it. So when you put it in your calculator, you're going to put parentheses negative 1 divided by 3 to get that negative 1/3. And then you're going to do 1 minus 4, 1 plus 2. And then go ahead and press enter, and that's going to give you 3. So your vertex is the axis of symmetry, still 1, comma, whatever you got when you plugged in the axis of symmetry. So 1, comma 3. Questions? All right, next part, part C. How do I find the y-intercept? How do I find the y-intercept? What do you have for me, Naya?
You look on the y-axis and see what point is on there.
You could do that if you had the graph already, but we don't have a graph yet, Naya, so how can I find it from the equation? Go ahead and look at your cheat sheet.
Plug in 0.
So I'm going to go ahead and do this at the bottom because I don't have a lot of room. So I'm going to plug in 0. So we've got negative 1/3 parentheses 0 minus 4 parentheses 0 plus 2. Again, when you use your calculator, you're going to use parentheses around the negative 1 divided by 3. Ooh, it would be helpful if I put a 1 there. Close your parentheses. And then you've got parentheses 0 minus 4, close your parentheses, and then 0 plus 2. You're going to get this 2.66 going on forever. You could round it to 2.67, but Big Ideas Math usually doesn't like decimals. They like to put it in a fraction, so you might wonder, how do I change this to a fraction? Great question. Your graphing calculator, it's so smart. It does that for you. All you have to do is hit math, and then hit number 1 for fraction. And then this will pop up on your screen. And then you just press enter, and it changes it to a fraction for you. That's 8/3. Incredible, right? If you missed it, don't worry, I'll show it to you again. Once you get your nasty decimal, you hit math. Then you hit 1 for fraction. and then you press enter, and it changes it to a fraction, and it's beautiful. I don't know if you all have ever cried while doing math because it's just so moving, but this is one of those moments. I don't know if you can see this. If we were in person, you would see these tears of joy, but since we're virtual, you don't get to see that right now, but just know it's there. All right, where were we? Y-intercept. So 0 goes in for X, and then 8/3 goes in for Y. Questions on Y-intercept? Okay, this is the part that gets real fun. X-intercepts. We haven't talked about X-intercepts yet. It's only for factored form. So for the X-intercepts, what am I going to get for my X-intercepts? What am I going to get for my X-intercepts? What do you have for me, Conrad?
You have P and Q opposite sign. Where's my P and Q? No, where did I write it down? You have, I can't see. P is -4, no 4 because it's opposite, and then -2.
Yeah, and
4, 0, and then
pairs. So the X is going to be P and the Q and the Y. Also, did you notice that P and Q is like Panther Quest? Is that a coincidence? Math is weird sometimes. All right, last part, maximum and minimum. Do I have a maximum or do I have a minimum? What do you think, JJ?
Maximum.
I agree. Why did you say maximum, JJ?
Because can you scoot the paper up a little bit, please?
Is that better?
Yeah.
So yeah, you're right. It is maximum, but why did you say that it was a maximum?
Because the 3 and the equation at the top.
This guy right here?
Mm-hmm.
So not quite. Remember, the maximum and minimum is always dependent on the A value. So your A is -1/3. Anytime your A is negative, you're going to have a maximum. Does that make sense? And then what is the value of the maximum? What's the value of the maximum? What do you think, Noah?
3.
Yes. And how did you know it was 3?
Y value of the vertex.
Y value of the vertex. Perfect. All right, let's go and graph this baby. So start with the vertex. It's at 1, 3. And then you're going to graph your y-intercept, which I know is kind of a nasty number, so just guesstimate it. It's 0, 8/3, which is approximately 2.6. So I'm going to say it's right about there. And then you can also graph your x-intercept. So 4, 0, and -2, 0. And then draw your axis of symmetry that goes straight through the vertex at x equals 1. Reflect whatever you can. So the x-intercepts are already reflected, so you don't have to worry about that. You can go ahead and reflect the y-intercept over the axis of symmetry, and then you can connect those points together, and you have a nice fat graph. It's kind of fatter than normal because your A value was -1/3, and anytime you have an A value that's less than 1, it shrinks, which makes it look a little bit fatter. It just ate a lot over the holidays, so, you know, just put on a little bit of weight, but that's okay. We still love this graph. All right, any questions about number 2? Okay, I'm gonna have you all try number 3 and 4 on your own. So go ahead and take out or flip the page. Does anyone need this before I change the page? Okay, if you haven't printed it out yet, go ahead and write down problems number 3 and 4 because I'm going to put you in breakout rooms, so you'll be in groups of 2 to 3. And it will be really sad if you go to your breakout room and then you're like, I don't know what the problem is. So make sure you write down the problem. All right, as a reminder, when I put you in your breakout rooms, make sure that your video is on. Make sure that your voices are unmuted, because it's super sad when I go to a breakout room and no one's talking to each other and everyone's just, I can't even see everyone's face. So make sure that you're interacting. If you have a question, ask your group members, because I might not get a chance to get to everyone's group. So do that. Does anyone have any questions before I split you all up?
Is the negative on the first one -1?
Yes.
Okay.
Any other questions? All right, off you go. I'll call you back at about 9:59. Fasalam and Tia, make sure that you join your groups.
Opposite signs, so P and a Q. So it will be P plus Q divided by 2.
So that's like -1 plus. Do I change the Q to?
Yes.
All right, so it's -1 plus -5 over
Divided by 2.
Yeah. -5 over 2.
All right, plug in the axis of symmetry into the equation to get your Y value.
Yo.
How are we doing over here? Any questions? Hello?
I'm here.
Okay, just make sure y'all unmute yourselves. Are you guys good? Do you have any questions?
We good. Well, I'm still working on the problem though.
Okay. How's everyone doing? Any questions so far?
The Y value for the vertex is 4, right?
Yes, sir. How's everyone doing? Any questions so far?
No, we're working on the problem right now and then sharing the answer.
Cool, awesome. How's everyone doing? Any questions so far?
No.
No.
So +6, and then +2. So 6 plus 2 over 2 equals 4, because 8 over 2 is 4. That's the axis of symmetry. Vertex is 4, comma, then we gotta plug it in. All right. X. Oh, no. 4 minus 6, comma. And then we do.
The axis of symmetry is 4.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
That's what I got. Then we do 4 minus 2 parentheses. For the
How's everyone doing? Any questions so far?
I got the 2 equations.
You got them all done, Gavin, you said?
Yeah.
Cool. What'd you get for number 4?
Is that the first or second one?
That's the 1/4 x minus 6 times x minus 2, the second one.
I got, for like the axis of symmetry,
Uh-huh.
I got 4.
And what'd you get for the
4.
vertex?
4, -1.
What'd you get for the y-intercept?
3.
0, 3. Yeah.
Yeah.
What'd you get for the x-intercept?
And then 6 and 2.
Yeah, make sure you write them out as ordered pairs. So 6, 0, 2, 0.
Okay.
And then did you get a max or a min?
A minimum of -1.
Okay, good. Sounds good. Good job. How are we doing? Any questions so far?
I'm doing well. I think she's doing well too.
Cool. Just make sure you share your answers with each other when you're done.
All right.
All right, everyone. Good job. I just wanted to shout out a couple groups before we go over the answers. So shout out to Anam, JJ, and Nick, because when I got into their group, they were chatting with each other and sharing their answers, which I thought was awesome. And then also shout out to Conrad and Jonathan. Same thing, when I got into their group, they were chatting about number 4 and talking about their answers. And I love to see that. So keep up the good work. Y'all are awesome. All right, here you go. Go ahead and check your answers for number 3 and 4. And if you have any questions, just unmute yourself and ask them. Anyone have any questions? Okay, does anyone still need this before I switch the screen?
I do.
You good, Ida?
Yeah.
Okay. Anyone else still need it? All right, let's go ahead and go over your homework for tonight. So you have 2 assignments. So Big Ideas Math 2.2 Part 2 is due tonight at 11:59. And then 2.2 Part 3 will be due Monday at 11:59. So make sure you get both of those done by then. All right, that's all I got for you. If you have no questions, you are welcome to log off. If you do have questions, stick around for a few minutes to answer those. Elise, you have any questions? You good? Tia, you got any questions?